Welcome to the Texas Conflict Coach radio program. If you've ever experienced or engaged in destructive or unresolved conflict, then you know it leads to broken relationships, distrust, and damaging results. Our program will help you manage and resolve conflict effectively with strategies, valuable resources, and support. Since 2009, our radio program hosted guest experts from around the globe sharing their perspectives, experiences, and expertise while giving you food for thought. If you can't listen live, then download and listen to any of our 300-plus podcasts in our library at texasconflictcoach.com. So sit back, relax, or join the conversation every Tuesday evening, or tweet us at TXConflictCoach.
Hi, this is Zina Zumeta, your guest host. Our program today focuses on Zingerman's community of businesses and its philosophies and customer complaint process. The businesses include the original business, Zingerman's Deli, plus the Bakehouse, Creamery, Catering, Mail Order, ZingTrain, the Coffee Company, the Roadhouse Restaurant, Candy Manufactory, and the newest business, Events at Cornman Farms. Zingerman's produces and sells all sorts of full-flavor traditional foods in its home in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is my home, to the tune of $50 million a year in annual sales. Effectively managing conflict has allowed Zingerman's to grow from 2 employees to 700 over 33 years. Like Apple Computers, Zingerman's delights its customers with its food and its customer relations. It also has been lauded by President Obama and others for its employee support, including its fair-based salary, hours, and benefits. Zingerman's philosophy of servant leadership, energy management, going direct, and handling customer complaints is at the core of its popularity and success. Joining me is Ari Weinzweig, CEO and co-founding partner of Zingerman's community of businesses. He was recognized as one of the who's who of food and beverage in America by the 2006 James Beard Foundation and was awarded a Bon Appetit Lifetime Achievement Award among many recognitions. He's the author of a number of articles and books, including Zingerman's Guide to Better Bacon, to Giving Great Service, to Good Eating, and Good Leading, Part 1, A Lapsed Anarchist's Approach to Building a Great Business, Part 2, A Lapsed Anarchist's Approach to Being a Better Leader, and his latest, A Lapsed Anarchist's Approach to Managing Ourselves, which was released in December of 2013. So in making sure that everyone understands that I am a great fan and devoted customer of Zingerman's, welcome to the program, Ari.
Thank you for having me. That was a very nice introduction.
Thank you. Well, can you start out to tell our listeners exactly what Zingerman's is? There was a description there, but there's more to it.
Well, I think in some ways you could probably tell better. It's not that easy to explain, but I guess I would run with the straightforward answer would be that we're a collaborative organization of 9 different businesses, all located here in the Ann Arbor area. You rattled off all the names of the businesses, and as you said, we focus on full-flavor traditional food. Beneath that, though, of course, there's all sorts of other things from, trying to create a positive, collaborative, open workplace to having an amazing customer experience, to open book management, to visioning, and all sorts of things. So we're trying to create a positive place to work and a positive place to shop and eat, and make meaningful experiences for everybody.
And you succeed, so it's really exciting to have you in the community, but also to really understand your philosophy and your approach to it. And we want to focus tonight on the customer complaint process. So you call it 5 steps to handling a customer complaint. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, and I think just as preface, I guess one of the things that we try to do is to create what we call organizational recipes. So these are just like cooking in the kitchen. They're not something that you have to follow in lockstep, but it gives everybody a guideline and a more effective way to approach whatever it is that's at hand and increase the odds of them getting to a successful conclusion while infusing their own insight and intelligence and creativity into the process, just like a good cook. So in the case of 5 steps to handling complaint, the first step is that we want to acknowledge the customer and their concern, and that can be a very simple "oh" or "wow," just some way to let them know that you've heard them. Which sounds simple, but it's not usually what happens. Usually people will tell you that you're wrong. Usually they'll tell you it's not their fault. Usually they'll tell you it's impossible. Almost anything other than just a simple acknowledgement. The second step is to apologize, and we just go right into that second step. We don't argue with them. It doesn't matter if it was our personal fault. It doesn't even matter if the customer's completely wrong. We just still acknowledge, and then second step is apologize. In the case of a very upset customer, we might need to repeat those first two steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they're ready to let us move to the third one.
Interesting. And I have to say, as somebody who has heard that from time to time, it is a very powerful thing to hear as a customer. So
yeah, people,
once we've heard,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
I mean, most people as customers, especially if they're not familiar with us or they're not, have not been in that setting before, many of them, when they're upset about something, are ready for a fight. And, this sort of goes to the core of your work. When you're looking for trouble, you'll often find it. And, our job is to make sure that they feel heard and honored and respected as quickly as possible so that they can let go of that.
That's great. And so, all right, so I now feel like I've been heard. You've apologized. What's next?
The third step is that we make it right. And this is where, particularly where the creative skills, the thinking skills, the listening skills come in, because every customer is different. There's not a straight answer. The expectation is that we're going to make the guest happy no matter what. In our organization, we authorize everybody to do whatever they need to do. And you could be your first day and you can refund the whole check. It could be your third day and you authorize delivery to their house. I mean, it's really whatever needs to be done.
Wow.
Obviously, we're not in the hospital. We're not dealing with, medical supplies or whatever. So it's not inappropriate in many industries that there be some boundaries, but at least that the staff member on the front line is clear on what they can do. And for us, they can do anything.
Amazing. Wow.
And they, in many cases, especially if they're new, they may well not know what to do, in which case we still are committed to making it right. And so it starts the same. Wow, I'm really sorry. Let me get a manager. Let me get somebody else over here for you right away. They're going to take care of you. And that affirmative statement, even when you don't know what they're going to do, because it's true, we are going to take care of it, that affirmative statement hopefully allows the guest tension level to drop just a little bit. Because in a typical setting, they just say, let me get the manager, and then the customer, understandably, their anxiety starts to rise because they're ready for more conflict. And then we coach the staff person, if they're going to get a manager, to explain to the manager what happened so that the poor guest doesn't have to repeat the entire scenario from scratch, which, of course, only exacerbates the problem.
Well, and that's wonderful, because what you're doing is really helping people, as you say, to relax as opposed to get into that fighting mode. And what I realize is that when I talk to most customer service, supposed service places, I am in fighting mode. And at Zingerman's, I'm not. Very true.
Well, that's
very
good.
True.
That's good. So the fourth step would be, then the third step, depending on what the problem is, it could, most things for us are resolved on the spot, in the moment. But some things, may take weeks or months, or, if it's a bigger issue and it's, with a mail order situation or with, somebody's out of town or whatever, it might take longer to do that, and may involve 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, whatever we got to do. But the fourth step is that we thank the guest for complaining, in the clear understanding that the alternative is they complain to everybody else, not to us, and realistically, although it's hard to hear the complaints, the reality of life is the better you get at handling them, the more you're going to hear, because the truth is most of us don't complain most places because we don't think anybody cares. So unless we're really irate, really bored, we won't say anything. Whereas if you're in a place where you know that the people who are, leading the organization really want to know what they did wrong so they can improve, you're much more likely to speak up. So, the truth is we'll hear complaints about relatively minor things that in most places no one would ever even think to bring up.
Interesting. So, and you invite them to do it more, which is impressive.
Well, because they're giving us good feedback, that's helping us to do better work, And then the fifth step is that we document it. We have a form called the Code Red form, and whoever heard the complaint writes it up. It can be on paper, literally, or on the computer. And we don't write them up to get anybody in trouble. It's just because it allows us to capture data that can help us spot trends or problem areas where we need to change training or change the system or fix a recipe or whatever. And then we have, people in each business, and then across Zingerman's a work group that sort of goes through all those, and one service steward who oversees all of that. And so they're watching for trends and problems and unresolved issues too.
How hard is it to train employees to do that?
I wouldn't say it's super easy, but I think it's fairly straightforward. I think it's just that it definitely takes training, and I think most places don't have a recipe, they don't do training. They just send people out there, and then the poor employee is left to figure it out on their own. And generally they don't do it well. And it's not really their fault. And then on top of that, it's not modeled from the top, because the people running organizations generally don't handle complaints well. And if they handle it well at the in our version at the table or with the direct customer connection, they haven't handled it well within the organization. So the incongruence of that causes a lot of tension too.
So what you're saying is that the internal complaints within the system are handled the exact same way.
If we do our job well, and we never get it perfect, but you mentioned servant leadership, and literally one of the key 6 elements for us of servant leadership is treating the people in that work in the organization like our customers, and literally never perfectly, but when I go to work, I really look at the people who work at Zingerman's as my customers.
Huh. So, how did you come up with this idea of the 5 steps?
Well, all of these recipes really come out of, in essence, out of mindfulness around our what I now can tell you in the training of unconscious competence. So it's where, in our case, let's say Paul and I were really pretty good at it. But we couldn't really teach you what we were doing. We were just able to do it. And as we grew, I've written an essay it's in the first part of the leading book called 12 Natural Laws of Business, and the 9th natural law is that success means you get better problems. So one example of that is you get more complaints by handling complaints well. Another good problem that we got was we were doing well and we were growing. So as you grow, you hire more people. You handle less and less of the customers and the customer complaints yourself, which means now there's 20, 30, 40, 50 people handling complaints. And, of course, in hindsight, not shockingly, most of them weren't doing it that great. And, you can model it, but that assumes they're going to notice the nuance of what you do and be able to repeat it or replicate it, which is actually unlikely. So, it causes frustration, but then we quickly realize, well, it's not them, it's us. And we're failing to provide effective training. We may be modeling it, but that's, only slightly helpful. We need to get clear on what we really expect from people. And so that led us to develop recipes. And we have 3 steps to great service, which is like the corollary for it, and then the 5 steps to handling complaints. And then now, we have, dozens of these throughout the organization. And again, the key is there's a lot of freedom within them. So, for instance, it doesn't say how to acknowledge it to the guest, but it says to acknowledge it. It doesn't say how to fix it, because you got to bring your creativity. So, one customer doesn't like their sandwich, wants a new sandwich. One wants a refund and a new sandwich. One doesn't want anything. They just want to be heard. One wants me to call them at home. And the symptom is the same. The symptom is the same, but the resolution can be radically different. And if we try to apply, a pat standard answer across the board, we're going to end up with 3 out of those 4 are going to be unhappy.
Interesting. Wow. Well, you talked about servant leadership. What do you mean by that?
Well, it comes from a book and an approach. The book was written in 1977 by Robert Greenleaf. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it, having read it 2, 3, 4 times. And then I've written an essay about our adaptation of it, which is in part 2 of the Guide to Good Leading series on being a better leader. The overriding or overarching premise of servant leadership is that the leader's number one responsibility is to serve the organization, not the other way around, which is pretty much the opposite of the way most organizations in a hierarchical setting, which is almost all of them, even in the nonprofit world, are set up. So the old school model is that, we hire people to help us as bosses to do better work. This is where we hire people to help them do better work. And so literally one aspect of that is for us to provide them with service, So the 3 steps to great service and the 5 steps to handling complaints apply that way too.
That's wonderful. Well, let me just tell everyone that you are listening to the Texas Conflict Coach Blog Talk radio program, and we're talking about Zingerman's community of businesses and their philosophies of handling customer and employee conflicts and more with Ari Weinswag. So you had talked also about going direct and energy management. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. So the idea of going direct, it's to pretend there won't be conflict is fantasy and not, real life. So again, we just tried to figure out how do we teach people how to handle conflict in a constructive way and normalize it, because there's nothing wrong with disagreement. What's wrong is when we don't handle disagreement, in an effective way. If you want diversity, which we do, then we're going to have different points of view. And as Paul always says, it's about learning how to disagree without being disagreeable. So the 4 steps are that we coach people to go direct. That sounds simple, but the reality is most of society goes to everybody but the person that they're upset with. I guess if you have people outrageous, they may dive right in and go after the person they're upset with. But in most in most settings, they go talk to everybody but the person. They want the boss to fix it. They want somebody else to fix it. They want to complain to their friends, etc. So anyway, by coaching to go direct, it creates a healthier setting. Because the reality is, we learned the hard way. If the employee comes to me to complain about another employee and I go, oh, I'm so sorry, I feel terrible, I'm going to go talk to them. And then when I go talk to the other employee, they're going to tell me a totally different version of it. So this way, they're going direct. If they need help or coaching on how to do that, we could help them. If they go direct and it still doesn't get resolved, then we ask them to put it in writing. And that way it helps to clarify the situation. This is what's bothering me, et cetera, and we ask them to CC a manager or HR or something else, so we start to elevate the conversation. And then the 3rd step is that they would ask for help. So they would get a manager, a senior coworker, an HR person to sit in on the conversation and, in essence, do what you do for a living. Although we're less trained than you are, but we've had our fair share of practice over the years. And then if you still can't work it out, the ultimate level is that they would bring it to the partners group, which is the highest body, so to speak, in our organization, which is the 18 managing partners, and we would put the best, minds in the organization to work at trying to resolve the issue.
Wow. Well, I think you're right that going direct is something that is the opposite of first of all, what we want to do, but it's also very difficult for people to figure out what to say to the person that they're angry at or they're upset with. So you do coaching, you do training. How do you help?
Yeah, we do. It's, these are all just skills. I mean, it's, people get trained how to answer the phone. They get trained how to, put the tire on the axle, or I don't know, whatever their field of work is.
Right.
There's some training going on. It's just these are skills which are actually essential to the effectiveness of the operation of the organization, to the quality of life of the staff person and of the customer and of their coworkers, but nobody trains them on it. And so, it's nice to say they're supposed to have learned it in their family, but I mean, I came from a, nice, well-educated, pretty successful middle-class academic family, but everybody talked over each other all the time. So, it's and it wasn't ill-intended, and they weren't bad people, but it just doesn't work very well in organizations, So for me, it's a learned skill as an adult. I mean, and it's not that I didn't respect people. It's just where I came from, you showed respect by cutting them off.
Right. So, how do you train people to do that? Is it the same thing as that first step of acknowledging the other person?
Well, we have a class. We have classes on all of this. There's a class on caring confrontations that walks through, these steps and, does some role playing and that kind of thing. We have written materials. There's essays in the books. I mean, all that kind of stuff it's all there.
Wow, caring confrontation. That is beautiful.
Well,
and
we all need to
yep.
do it. It's just that no one trains us. Then we do it badly. Then it goes badly. Then we don't want to do it.
Right.
like anything
exactly
else.
Right.
Like anything else. I mean, I don't ride horses. I once got on one. I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't really want to do it. My legs hurt for 3 days, and I've never gotten on one since. Which is okay, because although I respect people who ride, there's no need for me to be riding, but so it doesn't impinge on my, or cause problems in my work or my life in any way. But, if you can't deal with disagreement and you're in a group of more than one person, you're headed for trouble.
Yeah. So you really have classes on many, many things. It sounds like training is a really central part of your organization.
Oh, it's huge. Huge. We do it all the time.
And are the employees expected to take the training, or is it something they request?
Some things are required. It's different in each part of the organization to some degree. Some stuff is required across the organization. Some things are optional. They get paid for all of it. So that there's constant learning going on. And, and then over time, too, it gets built into the culture so that supports the, even if people aren't going to a class, they're still in a setting where they're around others who are familiar with the material.
Yeah. And the other thing that it does is people have a common vocabulary for what you're asking
Absolutely.
them to do, which
Yep.
I think makes a big difference. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you mean by energy management?
Well, energy management is really just, energy is what we bring everywhere we go. Most people, again, are not mindful of it, but they're still bringing their energy. So, energy is like when you're slouching, looking negative, scowling, your energy is negative. When you're smiling in a grounded, calm way, your energy is positive. So, we're all familiar with it. We just don't think about it.
So this is really, everything that you've talked about tonight is really about consciousness of what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're coming across, and also consciousness of how you're teaching. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Well, we're Bo Burlingham wrote us up in Inc. magazine in, January of 2003. and the title they used was Coolest Small Company in America, which I don't really know is true, but I've come to sort of realize we might actually be the most mindful company in America. So it doesn't mean we're perfect.
Yes.
It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. It just means that there's very little, although the customer may not likely know it or even think about it, there's very little that happens that's not mindfully designed. And that doesn't mean it's all scripted, because we're not really telling people exactly what to do. We're giving them tools so that they can go for greatness on their own. And, there's guidance and support and training, but the idea is once you teach people the recipe for energy management and explain to them what energy is, any 13-year-old can understand it.
Yeah, it's very powerful. So one of the things that you had mentioned is that you have beliefs about beliefs.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's true. Well, the next book, which I'm working on, which is still a year away probably, is about beliefs, hope, and the spirit of generosity in the workplace. So I believe that beliefs, and I'm not talking about religion, but beliefs underlie pretty much all this other work, and that beliefs have a huge impact on outcomes. So for conversation's sake, if you believe that customers are out to get you and are generally trying to cheat you, and you have to keep your guard up all the time, you would never have designed 5 steps to handling complaint that authorized every employee to do what they needed to do to make it right.
Right.
If you believe that people are out to get you, you would demand proof of purchase, receipts, and all kinds of other things that we never really hardly ever ask for. If you believe that most frontline employees aren't very smart and don't know what they're doing, you would never design recipes that allowed them the space and freedom to make decisions. On the other hand, for us, we believe that everybody's smart and that anybody can learn how to do this stuff. So as a result, we spend a lot of time and money on training. As a result, they learn it and they do a good job. As a result, when you come in, you get better service.
Right. Right.
If you
expect it.
So, yeah, and so if you believe that energy management stuff is mumbo jumbo, that's a waste of time, then you don't train anybody on it. Then the staff people's energy, all of our energy, varies widely depending on our mood or what happened. And then when you come in as a customer, part of why you're not responding defensively if you have a complaint is because you're not getting aggressive negative energy from the staff person in the first place.
Right. Right. And
you may not even be conscious of it, except now I've told you, but normally you might not even be conscious of it. You're just responding to them in the way that they're, dealing with you. So if they stay calm and grounded, then you stay calm and grounded. And I believe the whole outcome will be more effective because, there's not that tension that takes up so much space in most organizations.
Wow. Yeah, so you're really going back to...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, becoming mindful of beliefs is really important, and the more I study it, the more I realize how important it is, and they're sort of like the root structure of the plant, so you don't really see them, and nobody talks about them, but everything that grows above the soil line, which is what everybody focuses on, actually has this root system underneath that has a huge impact.
Yeah. So it's really going back to the reasons that you designed all of the things that we've been talking about and what's really underneath all of that. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think with your work, around conflict resolution, if it's beliefs are generally self-fulfilling. So I would guess that a big piece of your work is if people don't believe that they're going to get a fair resolution, they won't.
Yeah, although I have to say that a lot of what we do is to take people who don't believe that and disprove it.
No, you can change your beliefs. Beliefs are not values, so people's beliefs can be changed. But if they hold to the belief that they're probably going to get screwed, they're gonna, and it's gonna be self-created because they're gonna be so aggressive and that they're gonna provoke anxiety and aggression in the other person, who's then gonna negotiate much harder than if, if they had the belief that it was all gonna work out for the best. Their energy would be calmer, and they would be much more likely to get to a positive resolution.
Right. And so we spend a fair amount of time creating hope for people.
Yeah,
that's exactly
absolutely.
Right. That is right. Wow. Well, if people who are listening think, well, gee, this is a great approach, and I'd like to try something, what would you suggest that they try first?
Well, I think the customer service stuff is straightforward, and almost every organization has clients or customers or guests that they're dealing with. In the business books, the servant leadership in part 2, I believe only requires, you're the only one who has to change. Nobody else has to do anything. And those are all good. If they want to look at ZingTrain.com, they can see our training seminars. They're not about the food business. They're universal. We get people from all walks of life. I just spent the last 2 days teaching our 2-day seminar on visioning. We had people from nonprofit world. We had people from a horse barn that they use horses for therapy. We had people who sell popsicles. We had people from all walks of life, and this is 2 days I'm teaching them our visioning recipe. But there's 9 or 10 different seminars, so they could take a look at those. And then also the business books are on ZingTrain.com as well. And the service book, so any of those could be of help. Or they can just email me. It's Ari@Zingermans.com, and I'll do my best to answer their questions.
And you will. That's true. That's great. Well, is there a final message that you would want to leave with our listeners? The most recent book is on managing ourselves, and I'm not going to read the quote to you, but there's a quote in there from, I have a high fascination and interest in the anarchists, and there's a guy named Amon Hennessy who was a Catholic anarchist in the late 20th century, and he points out or says what I believe to be true, which is you really can't change other people. What you can do is change yourself, and that, the most effective change comes from what he calls the one-man revolution, and that if we're waiting for the other person to get their act together, it's a long wait. So I think the more I can focus on improving my own energy, improving my ability to be empathic, improving my ability to get into beginner's mind, improving my sense of compassion, my mindfulness, etc., it's going to make everything else flow better. And it's going to make my own life better in the process. So it's not all about altruism. It's really about, true synergy, and that the more I do it, the better I serve others around me, the more rewarding my own life and work gets. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Well, let me just mention again that your website is Zingermans.com, and it has all of those pieces that you've been talking about, and with the ZingTrain and the books and all of those things. They'll find the mail order at Zingermans.com, and then the seminars at ZingTrain.com. Okay, great.
And if they have questions, again, they can email me at Ari@Zingermans.com.
Oh, it's wonderful. This has just been a pleasure, almost as wonderful as eating your food. And I can't thank you enough.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Texas Conflict Coach. We hope you've enjoyed the program. You can find over 300 podcasts archived to listen at your own convenience at TexasConflictCoach.com. or download the podcast at iTunes or Stitcher Radio. To learn about upcoming radio programs and resources, sign up for our monthly e-newsletter.